just want to interrupt this amazing podcast with a brief message about one of our sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic in Oneida, New York. I found Dr. Pete 8 years ago due to my continual discomfort and pain in my back, and as an active athlete and someone who likes to play hard, my sessions in the gym started to regress. My sleep went downhill. After a comprehensive evaluation by Dr. Pete's team, I was given a detailed treatment plan. After 3 months of care, my body felt amazing. I have used Dr. Pete as my personal chiropractor for the last 8 years and attribute much of my physical abilities and overall health to his approach with chiropractic care. The good news is Lombardi Chiropractic is offering a 50% discount on the initial exam and x-rays to all new members that use the coupon code A is A. So stop trying to self-diagnose and save yourself time and money by visiting lombardichiropractic.com and schedule your initial consultation today. Welcome back to all our listeners to the A is A Health Podcast. Today is me and Andy rocking out.
Yeah.
And,
what's up?
Hey, dude. We're going to jump into 5 diet myths that are really popular in today's world. They're all over the internet, and you hear, different people talking about them at different times of the year and whatnot. And we want to get into them and sort of give you our opinion on it. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just sort of what we think.
Yeah.
So if something we say today has been working really well for you, then, keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
Right.
Nutrition is very individual. So some things apply to some people more than others. And that's going to be the case with these things too. But we'll give our thoughts on them. And I think, Josh, you have like a little list of some myths that we'll touch on today, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
yep.
Cool.
We're going to get into 5 and then we'll throw a bonus one out at the end. Let's jump in. So the first one is consume fat-free foods. We see this all the time. The labels say fat-free. A lot of times you see yogurt as, no fat or 1% fat.
In marketing, when it comes to foods, I think fat-free has become or low fat. That's the other thing you see has become a big marketing strategy. Those foods sell because people are still afraid that they think that fat is unhealthy or that fat makes them fat.
Yeah. And, it started, what was it, Andy, like in the 70s there with Ansel Keys when they did that, that study there.
60s and 70s. Yeah.
60s and 70s where.
7-country study.
Yeah. And, at the time they were saying, fat was bad and consume more carbs, grains, and now here we are realizing in today's world and with all the new research that fat is really good for you, the right fat.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think the concern was because back then there was a big rising epidemic of heart disease and heart attacks and cardiovascular disease, all that kind of stuff. And when they did autopsies of people who died of heart disease, they would see all these fatty plaques in their arteries. And, those plaques contain a lot of cholesterol too. So they started to hypothesize that it must be the fat and the cholesterol that's causing all of these plaques to build up inside of our arteries and cause heart disease and heart attacks and strokes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, back, like you said, back in like the 50s, 60s and 70s, there was that hypothesis basically was generated and everyone started thinking we need to limit and avoid cholesterol and fats as much as possible so that we don't gunk up our arteries, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that backfired.
Yeah, it did. And it really stuck with us for a long time too. It came out of some it was a good hypothesis. That's what science should do is you observe fatty plaques in arteries. So you create a hypothesis. You say, oh, maybe fat and cholesterol are bad for us. So we should possibly avoid those things. That's a good start. But then you have to do good research and determine if your hypothesis is correct or not. And no good research was done for probably like 3 decades or so. And that advice just kept getting repeated, like avoid fat, especially saturated fat, limit your cholesterol. Like that was what Americans were that was like what the government and the USDA kept just like telling everyone all the time. And it kind of became ingrained, and it's been pretty overturned in the last 20 years. Like I'd say like since like 2000, let's say, but it was so ingrained for so long that it's a persistent myth that even still to this day, people are afraid of fat.
when we have this photographic memory of the food pyramid.
Yeah, yeah,
So I remember this vividly, like on the bottom, it was like whole grains and cereals and breads, and it
bread.
said
Yeah,
like 8 to 10 servings a day, right? And
yeah.
then at
And
the
then
very,
fats were up at
very,
like the very top
yes,
and was like limit.
it says use sparingly
Sparingly,
fats and
that's what it was. Yeah,
oils. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but
yeah.
like you said, it's still mainstream today, even though I know a lot of people have turned the corner, and are on the page where we are with fats aren't bad, for the most part, if it's the correct fats. But there's still a lot of people and a lot of marketing pushing low fat. And
Yeah.
so, for the listeners out there, if they're eating good, clean fats, including saturated fats,
Mhm.
you're going to be right where you need to be. I know me and you consume quite a bit of fat.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
I just had lunch and I had breakfast sausage. So it was venison with 30% pork fat mixed in.
Yeah. Nice.
I had avocado oil, spinach, and macadamia nuts. And so
Awesome.
that's like
Yeah.
probably
That's a very
40
high
grams of,
fat. Yeah.
yeah, and it feel great. And
Yeah.
it
I mean,
was,
so far today, I've had my dark chocolate, which is all fat. Yep.
yeah,
And protein shake. And after the podcast, I'm probably going to have some eggs and bacon. So
exactly.
more fats. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing I want to touch on before we move on, is a lot of foods where people get confused here is it'll say, let's say fat free. They have to make up for the flavor somewhere. So these foods are generally higher in sugar,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
which we're trying to avoid almost entirely.
Well, so that's one of where this whole hypothesis really backfired. And
Yes.
so they told us to limit our fat as much as possible. And Americans wanting to be healthier, they took that advice and they tried to eat low fat foods and fat free foods. But you're right, we have to get our energy from somewhere. And I mean, if you eat just plain protein, that's incredibly bland and it doesn't supply really any energy or anything. So foods have to have something to make them palatable, and it's either going to be fat or it's going to be carbohydrates and sugars, something to make them taste good, or a combination of those things. So when we started going super fat free in like the 80s and 90s and whatnot, we ended up going really high in sugar. Like I remember, what were they called? Like Nabisco used to make these, they were really popular in like the 80s and 90s, but they were basically these fat-free like cookies or whatever.
Oh yeah. They were almost like a fig filling, right?
Yeah,
Have you?
yeah. I don't remember what they were called. They had a name though that implied that
Yes.
they were fat-free or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you looked at the nutrition facts, it was all just like a ton of sugar and flour, and like they had to put in something to make it taste good, because if you take the fat out, it's disgusting. So yeah, like that's the problem. When we went fat free, we ended up going ultra high in the other direction, super high sugar, and that's far worse for your health than fat, which is actually good for you.
I just wanted to take a quick break from this episode to tell you about one of my all-time favorite supplements, Collagen Protein. I've been taking collagen for over 15 years, and I consider it a staple in my daily health routine. Collagen is the primary building block of connective tissues, such as hair, skin, and nails, as well as ligaments, tendons, cartilage, and bone. If we don't get enough collagen, then these tissues age prematurely, leading to wrinkled skin, thinning hair, and painful joints. That's why I take collagen every day. It keeps my hair, skin, and nails healthy, and my joints strong and pain-free. The brand I use is NativePath. I choose NativePath because their collagen is the highest quality available. It's organic, it comes from grass-fed cows, it includes both type 1 and type 2 collagen peptides, and it's hydrolyzed, which is critical for better absorption. NativePath even makes collagen coffee creamers. I personally use the vanilla creamer, and it's absolutely delicious. I highly recommend adding collagen to your health routine. If you're interested, go to nativepath.com and use the coupon code AISA15 to get a 15% discount on your order.
Another thing I've seen, like with yogurt, so if you get like a fat-free or I think it's low-fat yogurt, you look at the carbs, it's like 30 grams of carbs, 28 grams of sugar, versus what I eat would be the full-fat Greek yogurt or the 5%, milk fat. And that's, I think, 7 grams, and which, is naturally occurring within the milk. But so there's the difference. They get rid of, 7 grams of, or I'm sorry, maybe they're getting rid of 15 grams of fat, but they're putting in 30 grams of carbs,
Yep. That's what always happens when you try to go low fat, is you end up making it high sugar, Or if they're trying to make it not high in sugar because people know that sugar is bad for you, they end up loading it up with a bunch of artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors, like anything to make it taste good, because you've taken the fat out and now it's just, it's pretty disgusting until you sweeten it or flavor it, you know?
For sure. For sure.
You know, before we leave this one though, I was going to say, I don't want people just to think that it's not that like fat is not bad for you. So don't be afraid of fat. Like it's even one step further than that. I would say that if you choose the right fats are really, really good for you.
Agree. Yes.
You know, so when we talk about the right fats, basically we just mean not vegetable oils. That's the best way to think of it. But I'm thinking of like fats from fatty meats, butter, even like cheese, if you tolerate dairy, you know, macadamia nuts, like you said, or other nuts can be fine. Avocados, olive oil. So a lot of those monounsaturated fats that you would get from like nuts and avocados and olive oil, that sort of thing. And then healthy saturated fats like from meat and coconut oil, dark chocolate, butter. So those fats are incredibly good for you. A lot of them are anti-inflammatory, and fats help carry, you know, some nutrients are water soluble, like let's say vitamin C, and some nutrients are fat soluble, like let's say vitamin E. If you want to get those fat soluble nutrients, vitamins, minerals, whatever, into your body, they need to be carried in with fat. And that's one of the big benefits of eating a diet that has an appropriate amount of these healthy fats, is you can actually get those fat soluble nutrients into your body.
Absolutely. And fat keeps you fuller longer.
That's another big one. Yeah. So for people looking for weight loss, you know, if you're eating a high carb meal, you might be hungry an hour and a half or 2 hours later. If you eat a high fat meal, you might be full for the next 4 or 5, 6 hours. And that makes a big difference at the end of the day. When you look back at how many calories you ate over the day, if you ate meals that keep you full longer, you're going to just consume less calories. Yeah, a lot of benefit. I'm glad that one has finally gotten overturned for the most part.
For the most part, yeah. Yep. All right, so that was number one. Number two is breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yeah, I don't know where to start with that. I think every meal is the most important, right?
Yeah. Well, you know where I want to start with this one is I've talked about this before in some seminars I've done in the past, but where that phrase comes from, I don't want to get this wrong. I believe it was one of the cereal companies. I want to say Kellogg's. I might be wrong about that, but basically one of these companies that makes a lot of breakfast cereals came up with that phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And they started like putting it on their advertisements and commercials and whatnot. And then it just starts getting repeated. It's not like that didn't come from like a scientist or researchers or anything like that. That came from people making Pop-Tarts and waffles and breakfast cereals. And then they tell you breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Go buy our products. Yes.
It's funny. Neither me or you really eat breakfast.
No. Yeah. I mean, eventually you do, because if you just consider breakfast to be your first meal of the day.
Yes.
But yeah, it's not like there's anything magical about eating at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever. That timing isn't as important as we were led to believe.
Yeah. And, you know, one interesting observation I've made with that over the years is there's a group of people thinking they need to eat when they first get up. And if they don't, they have very low energy all morning, almost nauseous. And that's a blood sugar issue. You know, in my opinion, they're not burning fat for fuel. They're relying on, you know, getting frequent sources of generally carbohydrates to keep them fueled. Because there's a lot of people that say, oh, you don't eat till 10 or 11 in the morning. Gosh, I don't know what I would do without my bagel at 7 a.m. And it's like, well, you know, even at 10 or 11, I'm not hungry. You know,
and what I would want people to understand, if they're in that boat where they think that, like, oh my God, at 10 a.m. I'd be like ravenous if I didn't eat at 8 a.m. or whatever. That's a sign that there's something wrong with your body, your metabolism, your ability to regulate blood glucose, whatever, because you should be able to go, honestly, you should be able to go an entire day. You'll get hungry, but you should be able to make it past 10 a.m., noon, 1, 2 in the afternoon without feeling like you're going to die or crash and burn. If you skip breakfast at 8 a.m. and at 10 a.m. you're starting to get dizzy, that's a sign that you have something to work on in your physiology. Sure. That's not what's supposed to happen. Imagine going back to hunter-gatherer days.
Yep.
If we woke up in the morning and couldn't find a berry bush or you pull a fish out of a river, and we all just got like dizzy and collapsed, by like 10 a.m., we wouldn't have made it very far.
So you couldn't find that magical waffle tree,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, that is probably a case of someone's metabolism being too reliant on carbohydrates. We've all got enough fat on our bodies, even if we're lean. We've got enough fat on our bodies to run off of for days on end. Yep. And if you feel like you're getting really low energy because you missed your morning bagel, then that means your body just isn't good at tapping into that stored body fat energy reserve. And that's what that's there for. So we want to fix your metabolism and get you to the point where you can use that and you have like consistent energy levels. You don't need the glass of orange juice to feel alive.
And for people listening, last year, me, you, and a handful of other people went 3 days without eating. And so, and that was not nearly as hard as I was anticipating. And
the hard thing is just like the boredom and the wanting to eat because we enjoy eating. It's a pastime, it's a leisure activity. But as far as physiologically, I never felt like I was like on death's door. I was going to crash and burn 3 days without food.
No, and other than having like brief hunger, like normally when I was bored, if I was busy, I was fine. I didn't even consider myself hungry. I had an empty stomach, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm starving,
Right.
Not at all. And when me and you are quite lean. And so, I think I lost 6 pounds in 3 days.
It was about the same for me.
I think I would have thought that would have been more, but I don't know, it's just the system's working correctly. And so we went 3 days. And so, maybe that'll provide motivation for someone that,
one thing to say about this, if we want to play devil's advocate and say, so they say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Mm-hmm. If we wanted to say something in favor of that statement, I guess one thing I could say is usually how you start the day is really important because that dictates how you're going to continue throughout your day. If somebody decides to have they say, today I'm going to start this off right. And they have a big glass of water when they wake up because they know that's important. And they decide to have a really healthy breakfast of like 3 eggs and some vegetables or whatever. That gets you off to a really good start. And then maybe you have a workout after that or whatever. It's more likely that you're going to continue your day, like eat a healthy lunch and then eat a healthy dinner and so on. Whereas I've noticed that once people go off the rails, they kind of are like, well, this day is now from here on out, it's a free for all, So if you start your day with, I should have a healthy breakfast, but man, those powdered donuts in the cupboard are looking really good. And, you just decide like, screw it, I'm going to have like a junk food breakfast. Then you're really more likely, I think, to just continue that trend throughout the day. You're probably not going to jump back on the wagon for lunch.
Sure, totally.
So if we wanted to say one way in which breakfast might be an important meal or like one of the most important is strategically, maybe in that sense.
And I think that's a mindset thing, right? As much as anything, if you're starting off in that positive frame of mind, like I've got one win for the day and I ate a really healthy breakfast, then let's keep that momentum going forward versus, at 8 a.m. you're already done. You're like, I screwed that up. I'm going to start tomorrow,
And that is why, like for me, I often do think to myself that the morning is like the most important time of the day. And I'm not necessarily thinking about nutrition specifically, but just like if I can work out in the morning, eat healthy in the morning, if I can start off by doing something productive, like get some work done at like 7 or 8 a.m. or whatever, that's going to be a
We
good
want to
day.
thank Suttmeier Law Firm for being a podcast show sponsor. Suttmeier Law Firm has worked with numerous clients within our community for years, and they couldn't come more highly recommended. They offer legal advice and representation for a range of residential and commercial real estate law issues. Are you buying a house, refinancing, having mortgage problems, or contract disputes? The team at Suttmeier Law Firm can guide you through these processes. As a special offer to our listeners, they are offering a free consultation when you mention the A is A Health Podcast. Visit their website at suttmeierlaw.com or call 315-363-7777 today.